The Nice Guys from 2016 is a buddy cop, even though the characters aren't really cops. One of them is a private detective, the other one is an enforcer, but it kind of falls in that category, almost a neo-noir type of film, but not quite, because this film does rely heavily on dark comedy, and it is oftentimes within the film, and it is quite hilarious. I found myself even rewatching the movie several times. I was still laughing out loud at some of the ridiculousness that happened, but it's not a comedy like The Naked Gun. It does kind of follow, it goes, for the most part, it is relatively grounded. There's a few times when it kind of goes a little slightly off the rails, but not too far off the rails. It is also an action film, and the first time I saw this, I got this DVD. It came to the theater. I didn't even realize it was in the theater, I don't think, but it does have a really awesome cast: Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, and pairing these two guys together, it is just magic. They really work well off of each other. It's a very unlikely thing putting these two guys together, and the chemistry just works really well. But we're not going to be talking about this DVD in this video. We're going to be talking about this new 4K UHD release from Second Sight Films in this really amazing thick box. We're going to be taking a look at this. I'm going to talk about the transfer. I'm going to talk about my impressions of the movie. I'm going to go a little bit into the movie, try not to go too deep, but we'll see what happens. And if you haven't done so already, if you would like this video, I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Now, we are just on the cusp of the Halloween season. Now, following this movie review, I'm probably going to be focusing mostly on horror films until the end of October. The Nice Guys, this is a Second Sight release, as I said before. Second Sight is a UK distribution company, and as you can see, this is a very amazing thick slip box. They do have a standard edition of this you can also buy on their site. And in the US, Warner Brothers has released a 4K of this movie as well, and this is what that one looks like. It's just a standard release, no bells and whistles on the packaging, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that transfer later. Now, the Second Sight, I've been kind of getting some of these. I got a couple of stacks of them. It's kind of ridiculous how thick these are for one single film, and they're really both awesome and both ridiculous at the same time, because they do take up a lot of space on your shelf. And I did do a review of this Brood when I got it, and you can take a look at that one on my channel. Now, this film was directed and co-written by Shane Black. Shane Black has started his career as a writer, and he's written a lot of quite awesome buddy cop mostly films that you've probably seen, like Lethal Weapon and The Last Boy Scout. And he also wrote The Long Kiss Goodnight, which paired Samuel L. Jackson and Gina Davis, a very unlikely duo, and it tends to work in a quite spectacular way, the way he puts these characters together. I really do like. I think it hasn't been played as much lately, the kind of buddy feature, and he really does a good job writing these, and in this one directing it. Now, he also wrote or co-wrote The Monster Squad, and you can check out a review of this last year on my channel, last October, I believe, and you can check out that review of this Kino Lorber 4K UHD release. Now, he's also directed a few films, and before this, he did the movie Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which was another kind of sleeper, like really awesome film, very similar to this one in a way, that starred Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer, and they really need to do like a awesome set like this this type of set of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I would buy it immediately. They haven't even put out a 4K of that one, but I think that one would sell pretty good. And both of these films didn't do good at the box office. This or Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, they both kind of barely made any money, and people didn't even know about them later until they were released to DVD or to streaming, or I guess at the time it probably wasn't streaming, it was cable, but they didn't know about it until they were released so they could see them at home. Unfortunately, because I think they're both quite astounding films. Shane Black also directed a bigger film, Iron Man 3. So and later on directed the one of the Predator sequels. He was one of the writers on the original Predator film, but the Predator sequel called The Predator, I still haven't seen it, but I heard it was a little disappointing. Now, what I find very appealing about this film is it takes place in the 70s, even though it is a 2016 film. They placed it in the late 70s, so it kind of has a very nice 70s type of vibe to it that gives the movie more of a timeless feel when you're watching it. It doesn't feel like, if you were to watch this and it took place in 2016, it might feel a little dated because the technology is not the same. Back then they didn't have the internet. They didn't have these cell phones all around. And the main plot of the film, it revolves around like a porno movie. A porno star is murdered, and then there's a film that they filmed something on that they're going to want to screen, and there's a film reel that has some information on there that the bad guys want to get to, and these two unlikely people become caught up in this very seedy situation. Russell Crowe plays an enforcer who people hire him to go and beat up people. He seems to have a bit of a moral code, as they usually takes cases from people who have been sexually abused, and he goes, usually younger girls have been sexually abused, and he goes and beats up their abuser. He does have a bit of a moral code, but he does beat people up. Ryan Gosling's character, on the other hand, Holland March, is a private detective, but he's got a lot of flaws. He is a bit of an alcoholic, and sometimes, like in the middle of the case, they go to a bar at one point, and instead of like following leads at the bar, he accidentally gets drunk, and then he accidentally falls into the case while he's drunk. But he does have a lot of flaws, and he doesn't have a lot of morals. He has a young daughter named Holly, played by Anjali Rice. I think I pronounced her name right, but she's an early teen, and I really like her performance here. And she has a lot of screen time, and she gets involved with the case, or tries to get involved with the case, and she's trying to be like her dad. And it's a very interesting character, and the actress at a very young age does pull off a lot of pathos, and also a lot of, you can sort of see a lot behind her eyes. Like, she seems like kind of like Natalie Portman in The Professional. You do kind of see like some wheels turning in like a much older soul and a younger body. So she was very well cast. The case is cool, but it doesn't matter as much as just throwing these two guys into like this situation, and one situation after another, and they quite hilariously screw things up, and somehow it kind of works out for them most of the time, even though a lot of crazy things happen to them. Like, say for instance, like Russell Crowe asks Ryan Gosling's character to throw him a gun, and he throws him the gun, and instead of catching it, it falls out, busts out the window, and they lose it. So that sort of thing happens. And one point they're trying to get rid of a body that they found in the woods, and they don't want to get blamed for killing it, and they try to hide it. They throw it over a fence, and it lands on this table of this dinner party by mistake. So it's just that kind of dark comedy. I'm not going to go too deep into the plot, but I will say that this is a very underrated film, and it has some very awesome dark moments, and also has some really great action sequences in it. Now, sometimes the action sequences may get a little heavy because it may go on for a little while, but they do like throw in these kind of like comedic things that happen during them. I'm going to talk about one other scene. Actually, this is really great. They're driving down the road, and Russell Crowe shows Ryan Gosling's character his gun. He has a gun on his ankle, and then Ryan Gosling's character falls asleep at the wheel, but he's dreaming, and he even, like, Russell Crowe's like, hey, you don't have to, if you want to take a nap, you can do it. You can just take your hands off the wheel. The car will drive itself. And then it turns out this big bumblebee's in the back of the car, starts talking to him, and then he wakes up in the car still. He'd fallen asleep, and then he wrecked. But what's the best thing about that is later on, they're in this middle of this fight, and then he jumps down on the ground, Ryan Gosling does, and he pulls up Russell Crowe's like pants, and he tries to get the gun off of his ankle, and then he's like, you don't have an ankle bracelet? Ankle gun? And he's like, no. He's like, why would you think that? And he's like, damn, that must have been the dream. And Russell Crowe's character's like, oh, that just takes the cake. But that sort of like that payoff from that dream, and then him trying to get it later. Now it can be a little frustrating because these characters are in dire situations where they're very close to getting shot or killed, and then they do something so ridiculous like that it's just like it's kind of like headache inducing in a way, and it kind of makes you think, are these characters ever going to get their shit together? And it's kind of the fun of the whole thing that they kind of do and then they don't, and sometimes it happens by happenstance that this good stuff kind of works out. But let's go ahead and take a look at this amazing release. This is some new artwork on the front. We got Margaret Qualley's character here. We have the Holly character played by Angelina Rice, and then of course Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. And we have this nice guys here. The way that it looks and how it looks in the opening credits is like this too. It looks like a neon sign that was popular in the 80s, but this is the late 70s, so kind of immediately as you're watching the opening credits and just the aesthetic of that just brings you right into the time period in quite an amazing way. Now, let's go ahead and open this thing. We have 3 items here. We have a 150-page bound booklet. We'll look at this a little bit more in just a moment. And there's also some art cards, which we'll also look at. And this is the movie. This houses the movies, and as you see, it's got some palm trees. You got the LA backscape on here. Apparently, this was shot in Atlanta, but I live close to Atlanta, and I couldn't tell. It looked like 1970s LA to me, as far as I know. We have 2 discs on the inside here. We have a 4K and a Blu-ray. This is the 4K. Now, what's interesting about them, there is Ryan Gosling's character here's wearing a suit, and here he's kind of wearing a Hawaiian shirt on the Blu-ray disc. Unfortunately, now 4K here is region free, so you'll be able to play this probably wherever you are, as long as you have a 4K UHD player. The Blu-ray, on the other hand, is region B locked, which is UK or PAL. I was not able to play the Blu-ray, so wasn't able to compare the difference between the 4K and the Blu-ray. Unfortunately, I still have not gotten a region-free player yet. Let's go ahead and take a look at these art cards, see what's going on with those. This is going to be my first time seeing them. The first one here, we got Ryan Gosling. It says Ryan Gosling is charmed in danger. There he is with the blue suit on the 4K disc. Here you go, Russell Crowe. It says Russell Crowe is locked and loaded. Here he does have a Hawaiian blue shirt on. It's pretty cool under his denim. Here is Angelina Rice is sweet and sassy, which that's a good way to describe her. I think that describes the character very, very appropriately. Margaret Qualley is crazy and beautiful. Now, what's awesome, they do have some activism like jabs at this character. She's an activist, and she's just completely like a teenage activist, and just completely like separated from reality in a way. Her mom here is played by Kim Basinger, and it says calm and connected. Now she plays, I believe she's also part of the Justice Department, but she plays her mom, and she's character ends up being part of all the bad stuff that's going on. Here's Matt Boomer's hitman character. He's cruel and unusual. And then let's see what we got next. There's Yaya da Costa. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Is shady and lady. So yeah, she ends up being another character working for Kim Basinger's character, who ends up being a bad guy as well. Here's David Keith, another kind of hired. He ends up being on the bad side of this, mean and spirited. But really, these 2 main characters could easily have ended up on the bad side. They do have a little bit better of a moral code than most of the shady characters. And this is Bo Knapp is killer and attitude. Now, these 2 guys are another duo of fools who are also bad guys that are they're out there trying to stop. They're working for Kim Basinger's character, and they end up making a lot of mistakes, kind of like Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe's character. So you got two different bumbling like people dealing with this situation. Let's go ahead and take a look at this book real quick. We got some new artwork. We got a car. We got a drink down here at the bottom. We got the main characters and three bad guys at the bottom. On the back, we got some more of the bad guys. We don't have Angelina Rice's character on the cover, which isn't quite right, but let's take a look a little bit. Now this is full of essays. There are a lot of essays in here, and that's what most of the book is. And there's the table of contents. We got And then throughout, we got the cast and the crew, and we got more artwork. I really like some of these art designs of this that they've done for this. And then we have some actual stills from the film. There's Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. There's Matt Boomer's Hitman character again. And so it's about 150 pages worth of essays talking about the movie. This is a very underrated film, and it's definitely one that I would recommend visiting. And another thing about the film, this is not politically correct, and that's what I really like about it. There's actually some intentionally things that are not politically correct within the movie, and there's a lot of profanity. There's some violence. It doesn't go too extreme with any of this, but it kind of comes in spurts. So it's not like a heavy-handed amount of anything, but when it does happen, it's just like, wow, that's funny. There's a lot of MFs dropped. Now, unlike Arrow Video, they typically in the back of their booklets, they do have a blurb about the restoration of the film or what's being presented here. But there is a little bit about it on the back of this. I'm going to read to you. It says, a new 4K UHD master produced by Second Sight Films and presented in HDR Dolby Vision, approved by director Shane Black. Now, as I said before, there is a US version of this, a Warner Brothers version that in 4K you can also get. Now, I haven't seen that one, but I have read some stuff about it, and it does seem that one is not quite as good of a transfer as the one here. Now, The Nice Guys wasn't shot on film. It's a 2016 movie. It was shot digitally. It was edited digitally. So, but it still looks really nice, and it almost looks film-like. It's like they did something to it in post to try to make it look more like a 70s movie in a way, but it is more vibrant. It does almost like some of these colors just kind of pop out at you. And I do feel that even like the dark areas, you don't see any noise. It's just very, very darker in those areas. This HDR grading, which unfortunately I cannot play the Blu-ray, but this HDR grading, it most likely makes the color of the skin tones look more realistic. Now the skin tones here do look quite nice. They look very fleshy, but they do look they look authentic, but they also have that the HDR color that I think I'm starting to really dig when you see like the skin look a little bit more colorful than you expect, and it looks more lifelike. Now, this movie is intentionally brighter in general. It does have a brightness to it, even when you see people's faces. They don't try to necessarily make this look like a neo-noir, even though there are some areas, like say they're at a party and they're out in the woods. It does, or they're out in an alleyway, but those type of things do look dark, but it does have a lot of color to it. It has a very, very friendly feel to it. It does have this kind of, I guess, the 1950s private detective film, but there's a lot of kind of whimsical stuff in here, but there's also a lot of very dark comedy, and just the mixture of those two things works really well for this film. Now, the detail levels here, the fine detail levels here are quite nice, and really when you see the close-ups of people's faces, you see a lot of detail in their faces, even though it was shot digitally with 2K. And it may have been shot 4K, but it was definitely edited on 2K. So this is an upscale from 2K. And even though that is the case, I do see a lot of fine detail areas, a lot of fine details. I see a lot of sharpness, particularly like again in the faces, but really it's like the black levels. It all looks very, very dark in the places that are supposed to be dark. But even like within, if you look at people's faces, just the darker parts of their faces, it all looks like really, it looks really good. And even though I think though, with these 2K upscales to 4K, I do think you get something more from it. I bet you if you looked at this Blu-ray, especially with the HDR grading, if you looked at this Blu-ray, you're probably not going to see quite as much. It's going to be really close, but it's not going to be quite as nice. Now, there are some pretty impressive extras on here as well. There's a director's commentary with Shane Black and the co-writer that's moderated, and there's also an interview with Shane Black, and it's about a 30-minute interview where he talks about the film. And there's also several other new interviews. Now, these were produced by Second Sight, including there's an interview with a co-producer, there's an interview with the director of photography, and there's a video essay, and then there's an archive featurette. So there's and there's 2 archive featurette, and there's also some cast interviews, which look I watched those. They look to be older ones that has an interview with most of the main cast, including Russell Crowe, Ryan Gosling, Kim Basinger, Margaret Qualley, and it didn't have one with Angelina Rice on there, but unfortunately, but it had Matt Boomer. So a lot of the actors do have interviews on here. So it's a pretty nice selection of special features on this release. So let's go ahead and rate this movie. I'm going to rate the movie, and I'm going to rate Second Sight's release. I'm going to rate it on a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. I'm gonna rate the movie. I'm going to give it 4 stars. Now, this is, I guess, like I said before, this is a very underrated film. It's a very clever film. The dialogue is very clever. It's very politically incorrect, which I love. The chemistry between Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, it is friggin' like hilarious, and it's there and it works. And there's another scene I do want to mention that's hilarious. Like Ryan Gosling's character gets like really drunk and he's laying on the diving board. Like, and you ask him about this robbery that Russell Crowe was involved in, and he was a hero in that situation. Russell Crowe kind of pours his heart out to him, and while he's doing this, Ryan Gosling's character just like passes out drunk on the diving board. But it's like that type of it subverts expectations. It basically takes these cliches and it plays into them a little bit, but then it completely like turns them around. And that's something that I really respect in this film, and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang as well. They're both really awesome. Like those type of films that just they basically take those tropes and just they flip them on their heads. So let's go ahead and rate Second Sight's film. Second Sight's release. This is an amazing slip box. It's too big, clearly, but I love it anyway. I'm gonna give it 4.5 stars. So this is awesome. And let me know what you think about The Nice Guys and about Second Sight, these big releases, if you would. And if you would click this box here, it's gonna bring you to another one of my videos that you can check out and watch more of them. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Thanks for watching.